Good evening and welcome to episode 5 of Leadership Matters. I am Dr. Kenroy Burke, your host this evening. It's almost amazing to think that we are already at episode 5, but I'm excited this evening about the wonderful discussion that we will have concerning not just the COVID experience that we're walking through, but we're also going to talk a little bit about education and the way forward for education, all the exciting things that we've been experiencing over the last couple of weeks. Yes, I did say exciting because for those persons who've been bemoaning 2020 and hoping the very best to jump out of 2020, I hope that 2020 has become a learning experience for all. It has surely been a wonderful opportunity for all of us to learn because none of us are the experts on COVID. None of us are the experts on walking through a crisis of this nature. But the beautiful part about it is that we all get the chance to sit and to learn. This evening, I'm so excited to welcome on the program Dr. Luz Longsworth. She is the Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of West Indies Open Campus. Dr. Luz, welcome.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here with you, Kenroy.
Thank you so very much for being a part of this program and for choosing to be with us. I know that this is that there's so much going on in your life, but it is great that you've taken the opportunity to be able to be with us. I know these days are so much busier and sometimes even more demanding, but I want to say again, thank you. Dr. Luz, tell us a little bit about who is Dr. Luz?
Well, first of all, somebody who prefers to be just called Luz.
All right.
But in a nutshell, a Caribbean woman, born in Venezuela, Jamaican and Venezuelan parents, lived around the Caribbean, married to a Belizean, grew up my children in Belize, lived again around the region, very devoted and to the regional integration. I have seen the joys, of course, of regional integration. I've also seen some of the challenges, and I work in an institution that has been a bastion of regionalism. So really very committed to that cause, committed to education, committed to young people thriving and coming into their own and into their own leadership. And I know this is a program about leadership. So very committed to seeing other persons step into their leadership roles. I guess that's me. I'm a very doting mother of 2 adult children who now think that I am their child. So I know, believe the roles are switched, but very happy to have seen them grow and move into their own careers and lives. So that's me in a nutshell, Kenroy.
Okay, so obviously one of the things that we've been discussing a little bit about is how is COVID treating you? What has the experience been for Liz?
Well, as you said, it has been a learning experience. It has been a challenge professionally and personally. As life would have it, I was in Jamaica where my elder mother lives, and when it all happened and we got locked down. So I was blessed to have been here with her during this period, because I think that was a purpose for me being here, to be able to be there. Challenging in the sense that I have not been able to see friends and family, and I'm very much, a touchy-feely person. I can't hug up anybody,
Yeah, what you're talking about.
Yes, but professionally, it was very challenging, of course, because as the head of the campus, the concern is the safety of our staff and students, their own ability to cope during this very difficult time. It required a lot of reaching out virtually to staff and students, a lot of communication. But you know what? That was actually quite beautiful, because we got to know our students, we got to know each other so much more than we would in the normal course of a semester. And it was really exciting to reach out and hear what they were coping with all across the region. And as you know, many of our students are outside of the region studying. So I had the opportunity of speaking to students who were in the middle of New York, dealing with the crisis there in the UK, in Australia, and it really brought home the sort of global crisis that this was. So we've learned a lot. We've had to change the way we do things rapidly and in an agile manner. And I thought it added a certain amount of confidence to my staff and students, because they were very proud that they were able to still keep on and to still keep providing a service that would allow our students to complete, and also to support others who did not have the benefit of some of the knowledge we had. So it has been challenging. People have not rested. There is no such thing as a holiday anymore, but we've learned a lot. And like you, I think that the 2020 vision that we spoke about at the beginning of the year is exactly what we are getting. 2020 vision. How do we move to the future beyond 2020?
Wow. Now you said two things there that I wanted to just take you up a little bit more on. One, you talked about the agility with which you have to respond to change. Let's talk a little bit about change, because we know that change sometimes is the enemy of many leaders. They prefer, to operate in what they know and the status quo. But let's talk a little about how important it is, not just even during this crisis, but how important it is for us as leaders to respond to change.
It is part of our role as leaders to ensure that our people and we ourselves are always ready for change. In fact, not just ready for change, but pushing for change and making change. And one of the things that I would say about the Open Campus is that we are a campus of change. I know that even though our staff and myself, sometimes it's like things are always changing. The technology is changing. We have to keep on top of the technology in terms of providing the best service for our stakeholders. But what we have been doing over the last few years is really preparing our people to understand that change is something that happens every day, and that we should not be afraid of change. And I have a little metaphor that I use, and I got it out of a book by Thomas Friedman, and he spoke about something called dynamic stability, which is an oxymoron, because dynamism is always change, but stability is staying in place, and it comes from physics. And what it is that things can change, but there has to always be this certainty or security of some level of stability. Yes. And even if it is understanding that it is in the change that you actually achieve stability. That if you try to resist the change, that what you are doing is creating instability. So like riding the bicycle, that when somebody is riding a bicycle beautifully, you see the person moving along, very smoothly, but you don't realize that it is a result of many small movements many small changes just to keep that balance. And so that is the metaphor I've used a lot with my staff and with our colleagues in the campus to help all of us recognize that change is not to be feared. It's like a wave. You kind of go along with it. If you fight against it, then you might find yourself drowning. So yes.
So you also spoke about learning, and that you've learned a lot during this period. Something again that I'm always excited about. Someone once said that leaders are lifelong learners. They ought to be lifelong learners. I believe that we need to discuss this evening. Now, tell me what you feel about that. Leaders must be lifelong learners.
Absolutely. It goes without saying. People always speak about born leader. Or are leaders born or are they made? I think either way, they still always have to learn to lead, because people change, things change. How you might have led in one organization is totally different. Even within your own organization, there are different ways of leading different types of people. And you have to always fill your toolbox with different tools, different skill sets that will help you to lead in varying circumstances. And that requires constant attention to leadership. Leadership as a professional study. I always laugh when I hear people say, oh, this person is a, professor of whatever, of nuclear fusion, and therefore is a wonderful leader. But that is not necessarily so. I tell some of my colleagues, guess what? If you wanted to be a surgeon, a good surgeon, you have to study and constantly learn about the new techniques to be a good surgeon and serve your patients well. And leaders are the same. Leaders have to be constantly upgrading their skill sets, getting new tools in their kit in order to be able to continue to lead the organization through difficult times, to lead people through difficult times. And because that's really what you do. You lead people. You don't really lead organizations.
Thank you. Thank you for those thoughts. No, what would you say to the leader who has not been in the classroom probably for the last 5, 10 years? Probably is thought to themselves, you know what, I know enough at this stage of my life. I've actually heard people say, there's a much more that anybody could really tell me that I haven't experienced already. What do you say to that leader?
I would say, well, imagine you were a doctor and saying that to your patient. How would your patient feel? I really see it in that way, or you were a pilot and you've been flying planes for how many years, and then they give you a different model and you say, oh well, it must be just like flying the other models, right? I think you also have to be very humble about what your role is. I think it's the most important role anyone plays, being a leader. And you have to realize that you literally have a lot of people's lives in your hands, because decisions that you make can affect individuals, it can affect their families, it can affect the future of your organization. So you should really try to find out as much as you can about those decisions. You need to refine your craft and to understand that I think it is John Maxwell that says you don't know what you don't know, and you have to, right, and so you have to find out what it is that you don't know, because what you don't know is your blind spot. It is what can make you make a wrong decision, can make you hurt a member of of a colleague or a member of your staff, damage someone's own confidence for life. It is a very, very important gift that we are given when we are chosen to be leaders, and we have to treat it as one that we keep giving back to in ourselves, building up ourselves daily. So yes, whether it is that you study formally or that you just read and keep yourself up to date on what is happening, primarily just recognize that you can't do it by the seat of your pants. It's not feasible. You do need to intentionally know how to lead.
No, Luz, one of the things that we must admit is that we are in a crisis, and this thing called crisis leadership, which I don't think would have been necessarily talked about a lot over the years, because many things were probably just a few challenges we had or a problem cropped up, but we're now talking about crisis leadership. What tips would you give to other leaders concerning how to operate, how to navigate a crisis, either in the midst of it or even after the crisis? What kind of tips would you give to them?
Okay, well, first I want to say leaders in crisis must recognize there's a difference between managing the crisis and leading through the crisis,
Yes.
right? So some people have a confusion that it's the same thing. You can manage a crisis and there are crisis management protocols and so on that you can follow. And I can only share with you what I think I have done through the crises I've had to deal with. This probably being one of the most, I guess, wide-ranging crisis, but all of us have gone through several, crises. And I thought about it before this evening, and I said, okay, the only way I can remember everything is to come up with a little acronym, and I did. And I came up with an acronym of TEAM, which is the bottom line of how I see we should lead through crisis. And the first T, I think, is transparency. Don't try to fool your colleagues, your team that you know everything, or that things are different. Be totally transparent. People can take the truth better than they can take a lie.
They can.
So, yes, this is a crisis. Don't try to say, oh no, this is going to blow away and we'll have it under control when you know you don't. I think the important thing is be transparent with the people that you lead. And that builds another T word, which is trust. And in the next little tip is E, which is empathy. I think that we have to always put ourselves in other person's shoes. So, how I am experiencing this crisis is not the way, my deputy is experiencing the crisis. It's, people get angry with you. They hit out at you. It's not you that they're hitting out at. So you have to empathize and understand what is happening. It doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily just lie down and let everybody walk over you, but you have to yourself, again, another E word, be emotionally intelligent to recognize that people are experiencing a tough time as well. And in A, I think authenticity. Just be who you are. Share. Be vulnerable. My staff knew that I was very worried about being home with my mom, and she was so vulnerable to what was happening. So my team were very supportive of me, and I tried to be as authentic as possible about what was happening in my life, so that they could see how I was responding personally and professionally. And I found that everyone came together. In fact, I would share that I had the best birthday party during this. I had almost half of my staff members threw me a surprise Zoom party. And it was the most touching thing, and that's something that they pointed out, that they thought I was always authentic and with them. And then they understood where I was coming from most times. So be yourself, because you are your best. You're the best person to tell people who you really are. And then M is probably the most important one, and that is meaning. You have to make meaning out of the crisis for your team. You have to help everyone to understand where this is going to lead us to. And, I often use the term, because we've been attacked a lot by hurricanes in the open campus. People are always saying, oh, the country will bounce back. And I say, no, don't use that word to me. I don't believe in bouncing back. I believe in bouncing forward. And so it's important in a crisis to go beyond the crisis, to have people see that, okay, this is for a time. And as someone once told me, you're going through it, which means that it's going to end at some point, right? And you have to make that meaning. What does that mean for this organization? For the campus, what are the opportunities that this presents for us to change the way we're doing things, to do things better, to become more recognized for what we do? And what is there for this meaning that holds us together when it just seems like this thing is taking too long to end? So that's my little acronym, Kenroy, of team, transparency, empathy, authenticity, and meaning. And I think that leading from your heart is how you get through a crisis, because that's really who you really are. And people will follow you if they believe in you.
Yeah, and one of the things that you say there that I think is extremely important is the fact that all that we do as leaders is really dependent on our team.
That's right.
In fact, we are no leaders without a team. John
Exactly.
Maxwell says, if you are leading and no one is following, you're just taking a stroll in the park.
Exactly.
And I think that that is extremely important that you build all of your experiences, even during this time as a leader, on the basis of your team. And I think that that is why people would see you therefore as extremely authentic.
Yes, I think
Now,
that's the important thing that leaders need to remember. You're not just a leader, you're a leader because somebody makes you a leader. All right. So it's not all about you at all.
yeah, people. It's based on people, not the procedures and the practices, and that's management, but leadership is all about our people. So let's talk a little bit now about the because your education, and I would not want you to leave here. You've already alluded several times to your environment. Let's talk a little bit about the future of education post COVID, and I say post COVID if there is really such a thing as post COVID. But let's talk about the future of education. Where do you see education going as a result of all that has happened? You say that we don't bounce back. I love that, so you bounce forward. So where will education go? Where do you see it going with it? Probably within the next, I don't even want to say 5 years, probably 5 months. Come September when people are registering again. Where do you see education going?
Well, I think in the short term, what we see is a breaking down of a barrier to virtual education. We in the Open Campus, we've been fighting this good fight for over 10 years, to encourage people to accept online learning and virtual learning as an important part of our own progress within the global economy, because every other industry has digitized dramatically,
Yeah,
except education, and particularly higher education.
yeah,
But so this has forced us into a digital transformation of the education system from preschool right up to university. So I see, adoption of new methodologies that will help students and teachers to gel better. Um, but I do see a blended model being the norm in the short term, the use of both face-to-face within, of course, the COVID environment and online. But beyond, I really see the classroom being totally exploded. I see the potential of global education happening, because once you are online at kindergarten, what stops you from having kindergarten class with somebody in Australia or somebody, and really creating global experiences for our people without the cost, necessarily the full cost of travel initially, and having to find places to stay, and that sort of,
accommodation, yeah,
right,
all
all of
those.
that. And that's all very exciting, and people being more willing to use this methodology to broaden their minds and the scope of what the education can bring. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the the fact that lecturers, teachers like yourself can use it in very, very creative ways. How do you teach somebody, to do a practical subject, welding or tile laying or hairdressing or barbering, using this methodology and exploring the technologies that, are available. So I see this as really taking us forward, but I'm hoping that, my former mentor, Professor Rex Nettleford, said to me once, that we must never, in all of the technology, forget the human side.
Yeah,
Because what I see then is that we should use the technology for good, for expanding our humanity, and not for dehumanizing us, getting new ways of curing diseases by collaborations and so on. So I see this as the first step. And so my view is 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're not going to recognize the classroom the way it is now. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
It is a very good thing.
What did we say earlier? We don't want any norm. So not even a new norm.
Not a new norm. We're not going back to norm at all.
All, because norm was not the best thing.
Exactly. I want to ask you a question. Now, this is interesting because I think that this is the first time in our discussions that anyone within the live chat has actually asked a question.
Oh.
And someone is asking you a question. How do differences in culture impact global online education? How do differences in culture impact global online education?
Right. Well, it would impact it very similarly to how it would if the persons were in a classroom together. So for example, let's say you're in a class with people from different cultures. Some cultures may be more aggressive. Those students may be more willing to speak out and to be a part of the exchange within the online environment, and others more reticent. But I think that online learning, when properly managed, allows for more equity within a classroom because people learn differently. So even in the open campus, we have students from across the region, and there are small cultural differences. So some students will be more willing to be participative. Others would prefer to go back, look at the recording, type in their comments, but it allows for multiplicity of ways of engagement that a single face-to-face engagement would not allow. You go into the classroom, you see the teacher engages you, and that's it. But with the online learning, you have the ability for persons of multicultural engagement on different levels. So I think it will enhance global learning, and it will also allow for a certain amount of equity. As I was saying to someone, nobody knows whether I have the top type of laptop or iPad or tablet. Anybody sees is me in this square, right? So in a way, it doesn't matter whether it's I have a 10-year-old laptop. As long as I have internet and it's working, we're all on the same level. So I'm hoping, and I see signs of some equities that will happen once we can get everyone access to the internet and to devices. That we know is a problem. So we have to work on that.
So Luz, as we close, and I can't even believe that the time has gone so quickly, but as we close this evening's broadcast, there's some young persons who are watching. There's always young persons who are watching, and they are excited about the whole concept of leadership. In fact, they see themselves as possible leaders. Some of them may have already started the journey. Give them at least one or two things that you would say to them right now where they are. Because sometimes we think that it is all about preparing for this leadership somewhere down the road when we are given a call to take up a role or whatever the case may be. Give them at least two practical things that you would suggest to them to prepare themselves for the next step in their life and their leadership journey.
Okay, I think that you're already a leader. Everybody is a leader as far as I'm concerned, in one way or the other, whether it's in your family, your church, whatever. So first practical tip, recognize that you're already a leader. Right? But try to analyze where you are a leader. Second practical tip, forget that you're a leader and learn to listen to other people before you lead. So first, recognize you're a leader, and then forget that you're a leader and become a good follower by listening to people who you want to lead.
Wow, so very powerful. Thank you so very much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us this evening. This has been extremely thought-provoking, and I can tell you that even from what I'm seeing here in the comments on the live feed, people have been engaged and excited about what you've been talking to us. And thank you. So we wish you all the best in your continued journey as you continue to reposition the open campus for the future of education. In fact, I think that we've already rolled into the future and we don't even recognize.
Future is now.
Future is now. Thank you so very much. This has been Leadership Matters, the weekly half-hour series based and aimed simply at supporting leaders along their journey. And I am so excited this evening to have had with me Dr. Luz Longsworth, Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of the West Indies Open Campus. I encourage you to join us again and join us every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time as we continue to talk about leadership matters, simply because leadership matters. Thank you.